Yes, so I am Jenny Lamonica from the Molloy College Art Department, and I am going to talk to you about what makes an awesome art portfolio. In fact, I am going to introduce you to our agenda for the evening. So first, we're going to get started by getting to know one another. And then I thought that would include, obviously, me giving you a bit more of an introduction to who I am than just that I teach at Molloy College. Um, but I think that understanding a little bit about what Molloy College is and what the art department is like at Molloy College is important because I think that you might be coming to find some of this in your own research about colleges, is that not all colleges, not all art programs, not all art schools are created equal. So context is very important, and we're going to talk about that a bit when we're talking about portfolios tonight, is that a portfolio is not a portfolio is not a portfolio. A portfolio aimed for different types of colleges might look different. So I want to place myself within my own institutional setting so that you know what my particular perspective is. Then we'll move into what makes an art portfolio admission worthy, meaning getting you accepted at the college where you would like to go, or as we've been saying, awesome. And what are the three components that are particularly used in terms of evaluation or assessment with regards to presenting an art portfolio. So this is the three major sort of areas of evaluation that we look at. And I'm going to see if you guys can guess what they might be, and then we'll kind of break those open a bit. I think that that'll be really helpful. I mean, it's basically like showing you the scorecard, right? If you were to be evaluated and what would the criteria look like, these are things to keep in mind. So, sort of like introducing you to a rubric, if you will. And again, not all schools would have those same criteria, but I think a lot of times they're going to be interested in the same sort of general principles. And then I'm going to show you some examples, and then I have this in quotes because these are online examples. I'm going to introduce you to some resources so that you can see how you can exhaust yourself, knock yourself out looking at all kinds of examples online. I'm also going to give you some words of warning about doing so. And then we'll have some time for questions and answers at the end. So that's a little snapshot. We'll keep coming back to this agenda so you'll know where it is that we're moving through as we're going along this evening. But first order of business is getting to know one another. So hello, my name is, as I said before, Jenny Lamonica. So I am an assistant professor in the art department. And you may have heard from my intonation, I am not a native New Yorker. I am a Californian. And I actually started my long artistic journey as an art student, an art studio, as we call them, a maker of arts. And eventually, well, let's see, when I was a high school student, I did all the accelerated programs of creating arts. I was very interested, particularly in animation. I came to love animation at a young age. I did some accelerated programs at California Institute of the Arts, and they had a Disney funded program there. That was the summer before my senior year. And if you have a notebook out and you're writing down tips, I would say that this is a very helpful tip, is using your summers. I don't know how many more summers you all have, and also with the COVID realities, but summer preparatory programs, also if there are winter preparatory programs, spring break preparatory programs, any kinds of enrichment opportunities that exist, even a lot of times local colleges offer them. Sometimes state programs exist, or private programs. I think that they can be very beneficial, particularly when they target specific aspects of portfolio development or general sort of art resume development that you may be looking to buttress yourself with. So in my case, that was really building out this animation portfolio through CalArts and this Disney-funded program. And I was really bent on going to art school after that. I did also did a Saturday programs all through my junior and senior year at Pasadena Art Center College of Design. They called it Saturday High. And every Saturday you would go to the school and you would do art studio classes with the professors there. That was another successful endeavor I did while in high school to prepare myself for college admissions and to build up my portfolio. And I did architectural drawings and environmental design drawings and packaging, like product design. And again, that wasn't necessarily in line with animation, but it showed diversity. So we're going to talk about that when we're talking about building our portfolio. And it also showed an eagerness and a willing to participate, to seek out opportunities and adventures and your passions beyond your immediate school environment, right? So I'll tell you, though, that my first semester, I went to a four-year college. I went to Sonoma State University in California rather than an art school. And part of the reason for that was that my father was a college professor. My mother was an artist. And between the two of them, they basically convinced me that it's fine if you want to become an artist. There was a little bit of nerves and hesitation knowing all of that goes into the world of arts, the roller coaster ride that it can be. But we want you to have a four-year education. We want you to have a liberal arts education under your belt to fall back on. And to be a well-rounded person and to draw from in your inspiration in your arts and these kinds of things. And I was a little reluctant, and they said, just get the four-year degree and then, go on to graduate school and do all the rest and, spend the rest of your life just focused on the arts, but at least get the breadth in the first 4 years. And what happened my first semester at the four-year college, I switched my major to art history. And I certainly pursued the path of making a lot of art, but my major shifted to art history, and I became an art history professor and an art studio. I had kind of lost the taste for making a lot of art with the commercial emphasis, with the training that was coming along with it of making your art marketable and how to make a living selling your art and the compromises that were coming to the craft. Meanwhile, I was realizing that one of the things that I always loved about art was the stories that art told, and that I was able to tell stories and interpret stories through art history, and that art could be my own engagement and not sort of something that I would build my career with necessarily for a living. So, I went on that path. I did my master's in art history. I did my doctorate in the history of art and religion. And now I'm a professor of art history, but because I've had such a strong studio component throughout all of those years, I still teach art studio and art history. And in fact, I'm also working on a degree in clinical mental health counseling so that I can also incorporate modalities of art therapy into my practice as well. So that's a long introduction to who I am, but I think that it's important to sort of get the pieces there. Move on to putting it into context. Like, we do have an art program, and there's two components to it. One is that we have a BFA program in studio arts, and within the program, you could major in drawing, painting, sculpture, ceramics, illustration, photography, digital art, graphic design, or art history. So those are kind of like the majors within the BFA, if you will. And those of you who are at the outskirts of just, getting started with the college search, BFA is Bachelor of Fine Arts. There's also what we would call a BA, a Bachelor of Arts. BFA, generally speaking, is a more prestigious degree in the arts because it involves more contact hours with the materials and more hours honing your craft. There are fewer BFA programs in the state of New York or even across the country than there are BA programs. So it's a degree that really speaks of sophistication for somebody who is a practicing artist. Now we also have a different track, which is a BS degree. So that's a Bachelor's of Science in visual arts education. And so putting that in very simple terms, this is basically a degree in art, but for people who want to become art teachers. So Molloy has a phenomenal, nationally recognized education program. And this is co-hosted, if you will, between our art program and the education program. And so this is why it's a Bachelor of Science. In addition to that, you could be a different major. That's why I was talking about these four-year colleges. You could be a psychology major or any other major, and then minor in fine arts, art history, museum gallery studies, art therapy. So say, for example, if you're a psychology major, that could be a good fit, graphic design, digital art, photography. The reason why I'm introducing all of this, and then one more slide, we do a lot of global learning opportunities as well. So study abroad, contextual, experiential kind of learning is something else that Molloy prides itself on. I'm leading a trip this summer with two of my colleagues to France. Every year these trips change, and this is just a trip that I'm leading, for example, but we have many each year, and they're tailored to teach art students. They have components that line up with courses in the curriculum and things to be able to give students international experience and show them on site examples of the kinds of artwork that we've been obviously learning from books and slides and these kinds of things. So the reason why I'm mentioning these things is that this is a bit different, although we do have an emphasis on a practical application and, really honing your craft of becoming a fine artist. There is this larger piece of a liberal arts education. So that would be different than what you would get in a school where you're not, let's say, SVA, for example, where you wouldn't be taking, say, for example, general education requirements and things of that nature. You would just be taking the classes that are relevant to the arts. You wouldn't be taking histories or, classes that are in service of sort of gaining a larger perspective of, the world and history and, things of that nature. I think that a lot of those other classes benefit an artist, as I had mentioned before, business classes and math. And we always try to advise art students on the specific classes within those required elements that buttress your skills as an artist. But all of that said, when I'm talking about myself and my colleagues and what we're looking for in a portfolio, we are looking for things with a bit more breadth and depth. And we're also looking for things that show critical reflection. We're looking for things that are showing an appreciation of other cultures, global sort of, at least a global acknowledgement or recognition, things that are not too, things that are introspective, but certainly things that also place ourselves within a larger context of existence, right? So that might be different than perhaps a design school that wants to see something that's very tightly focused and expressive of a very unique style that's unlike anybody else and is your unique fingerprint, so to speak, and very inward looking. We're more interested in seeing who you are in relationship to the world, and how you've come to develop your style, what you have to offer. All right, let's move on to what makes an art portfolio admission worthy or awesome. I've given a little bit of a tip of my hand here, but I want to see if you might be able to guess some of the other components or a bit more depth of what I just was hinting at here. You can even maybe guess what those 3 components of assessment might be. Imagine yourself, if you could, for just a moment, close your eyes and imagine yourself, in your senior year, towards the end of your senior year, and you're holding your portfolio. Let's imagine a big black portfolio, the stereotypical artist portfolio, and you're walking into a college art department, right? And it has your work inside of it. And you're coming to meet, say, 3 or 4 professors who could be your professors for the next 3 or 4 years, 2 to 4 years, I guess, depends on the college, right? And what is that whole evaluative process going to be like? What is it going to like? Are you feeling a little nervous right now thinking about this moment? When is it going to be? What words are coming up for you? Is it judgment? Is it nice to meet you and getting to know one another? Is it, looking and sharing and exchanging of ideas? Is it, what kinds of stuff is coming up? Is it presentations? Is it absorbing feedback, reception, right? There's a lot of dynamics. What do you think? It's the multifaceted process, as we just talked about, and it can be anxiety provoking. And one of the things that at Molloy, for example, and again, I keep putting myself in my own context because that's what I can speak from, is that we really try to explain to the students that this is our opportunity to get to know one another. And as much as it's about us getting to know the artwork of the student, it's about the student getting to know us, the professors, to see if it's a good fit. And I hope that can empower you when one day you find yourself in that situation, that as much as the portfolio is about an interview and it's about a process and a moment to present your work to who might potentially be your professors, it's also a moment for you to sort of interview them and see if they might be a right fit for you. Because ultimately, you might all be spending a lot of time together, and you want to make sure that the relationships are going to be good ones, that you guys have a good chemistry, that there's a sense of respect for one another, that there's an ease, not necessarily that there's no criticism, right? Because criticism is something that helps us grow, right? When it's offered constructively. But you want to really think about how you're embracing that dynamic, okay? And we always like to really think about it in terms of a conversation and an opportunity to meet one another and an opportunity to learn about you and your artistic development through the objects that you're choosing to show us. It's like a show and tell. Through the objects that you've chosen to show us in your portfolio. Now, we really like to see more, err on the side of too much than too little, because what I've seen over the years is that a lot of times students will put something in their portfolio that they go, I almost didn't even bring that. I don't know if I want to even show that, which, by the way, we're going to talk about that. Don't be dismissive of your work. Be proud of the works that you bring in, right? Don't have a negative attitude about the things that you're presenting, but be proud about what you're putting forth, right? But those items that they almost overlook a lot of times are the ones that we go, wait a minute, that one, I see something in that. And I don't know necessarily quite why that is. I think sometimes it's because what maybe we're taught to think is finished or good or polished is not necessarily always what's reflective of our best works. So we're going to talk more about the different kinds of qualities and criterias, but three main elements is the presentation, the explanation, and the contents. So we were really honing in on the contents of that portfolio, what actually goes into the portfolio. But the presentation of it is very valuable. How do you walk through the door? What is your personal demeanor? How much confidence do you have? Okay, so do not overlook that. Okay, if there was a takeaway that was very valuable from this conversation tonight, I hope that you learn that yes, portfolio contents are important, but it's also how well can you talk about that work of art and how well are you presenting that work of art? Okay, those are two pieces of the pie, almost as important as the portfolio contents at an institution such as ours. Okay, so portfolio contents, yes, diversity, style, etc. We're going to go into that, but presentation, explanation. So let's delve into this a bit more. What makes it awesome? Portfolio contents, the artistic skills. We were talking about that. Yes. The design elements and principles. Yes. Creativity. Yes. Are they creative or not? You know, or can they just copy things? It's less interesting. Explanation of works. Can they talk about it? Are they articulate? Or can they just fumble their way through it and like, that wasn't really enjoyable. I mean, there were some interesting things in there, but that was so awkward and uncomfortable and did not work for me, right? We got a lot of work to do. Presentation of artworks. It was a fumbled mess. Everything was jumbled and dirty and like disorganized and just, I don't know why they chose the things that they didn't know why they chose the things that they chose. Chaos, right? Okay, so these are the components. You can see how we have to harness them all and keep them all in balance. This is the culmination of what makes an awesome art portfolio. Okay, so let's explore these more in depth, starting with the presentation. Selection. We want to see a wide range of media. Okay, different types of materials. We're going to come back and look at this a bit more when we get into the contents, okay? But when you're asking yourself, what should I select? You want to make sure that you're selecting things that are not only indicative of your chosen passion, let's say. You want a range of theme, okay? As much as you'll want to show some element of cohesion. I know that's hard because I'm contradicting myself, right? Because I'm saying you want to have some cohesion, right? So for example, William, who's interested in character design, we actually had a student who loved dinosaurs. From, I don't know, the last 2 years of her portfolio development at Molloy, portfolio for then graduate school, she was really working on dinosaurs. Almost every class and project she did something with a theme of dinosaurs, which was great. But it was ceramic dinosaurs, it was, you know, dinosaur prints, it was dinosaur, and there were different types of dinosaurs. So there was the cohesion, but there was also the range of different type of media. And her senior show was phenomenal because you could see the through line. It was so whimsical. It was delightful. But you could see the talent in which she could express that spirit and the theme, but through so many different media, right? If you could do that, that would be phenomenal. And it doesn't have to be united just with a theme like dinosaurs. It could be a theme of like, of friendship or isolation or diversity or, you know, so a larger, broader theme. It doesn't have to be subject, you see? And we'll come back to that. Overall appearance. How do you do that, right? This looks beautiful. That's a gorgeous portfolio. Nobody's portfolio looks that perfect, ever. So don't stress. What do you do with odd sizes, right? Your art teacher makes you do something on 24 by 36, and then the next one's an 8 by 10, and then the next one is like an index card thing, and then the next one is this and that, right? I would suggest well, first and foremost, you have to always follow the portfolio guidelines that the school is going to dictate. And now in COVID times, there may be more of an emphasis on digital portfolio management. We, at the end of last year, were doing a lot of portfolio reviews over Zoom, where students were doing digital, taking pictures of their portfolio digitally, and then we would have the presentation over Zoom, and they would talk through the different works of art, much as like what I'm doing now. But some schools have digital portfolios where you would upload your images to, and then you would discuss it in that format. Some schools have you submit paper portfolios. Many schools still have you come and meet in person and present your portfolios, as those pictures that I was showing you. They have portfolio days where they do these types of things, but they may have very specific directions on how they want things. So you want to make sure that you're following those letters to a T, okay? If not, one helpful thing might be is to adopt a paper size and mount your works of art on that paper so that you can kind of move the papers side to side. And even if they're all different sizes, if that paper size that you're kind of shuffling side to side, let's say it's 20 by 18, is uniform, it's going to be very aesthetically pleasing and cohesive, right? So mounting might be a nice idea that comes under this next category of general professionalism, organization, cleanliness, mounting. Think about it, right? What's the order in which you'd like to go through your portfolio? Would you like to start with watercolor, like move through in order of medium? Or would you like to move through an order of themes or chronologically, right? So give some thought to those kinds of things and be clean, be organized, be neat, right? Label things. Variety, types of works presented. That's a lot, right? Yes, we want to see paintings. But it'd be great if we could see paintings in oil and water and acrylic, because these are all very different types of painting styles, right? And not just regular, any old paintings, but like, I saw a lot of landscape paintings, but I never saw portrait paintings. Can they not do faces? Or they never did figure paintings, the human body. So a lot of students nowadays have a gap in figure paintings. And that might be an area, particularly if you're applying to the big art schools, tight art schools, not four-year colleges where we're looking for, a well-rounded kind of curriculum kinds of art schools. Although even for us, we are really like to see figure paintings. But figure studies, figure drawings from life, nude figure studies has been for a long time a part of academic arts. So if that's missing from your portfolio, there's lots of programs that you can, partake in that will help to build that deficit. Same thing, drawing, and not just any drawing, but how much diversity in the drawing. Photography, ditto. Printmaking, etc. You get the point. And then that's all two-dimensional, but what about ceramic and sculpture? And if there is some ceramic and sculpture, are we seeing figurative, so meaning renderings of the human figure, as much as we're seeing abstract, right? Because those are very different skill sets. Are they able to, in three-dimensional form, copy what they see in front of them, or just do things from the imagination? Those are different skill sets, right? Now you might be asking, oh shoot, sculpture, how do I put that in my portfolio? Photographs, right? Graphic design and digital art, same thing. Animation, storyboards, images, right? Bringing in prints and copies of those as large as you can manage, and or bringing in your iPad or a computer to present those, right? And having that all set up in a nice presentation that you could lead the panel through would be terrific. People forget about sketchbooks. Sketchbooks are terrific, and I'll tell you why. They show discipline. they show that you go back to something and you do something over and over again. And we know that sketchbooks are often not great. We know that it's just a sandbox. It's just a playful practice zone. But we also know that a sketchbook is a sign of somebody who wants to get better, who loves what they do, who has a passion for it, right? So if nothing else, if you feel so self-conscious about sharing a sketchbook, at least bring in some pages of your sketchbook, right? At maybe key moments, and different things that you worked out in your sketchbook, right? Showing how the mind works. Sketchbooks are great. That's why people love Leonardo da Vinci's sketchbooks, because they showed how he worked out things that he was really wrestling with, right? Like, how does this bone connect to this muscle? And dissecting, how does it that this organ fit here, right? And how am I going to invent this flying machine? The answers of how he did all of those things are in his sketchbooks, right? And we like to see not just finished products, but things in progress. So that's the secret sauce about sketchbooks. And then other art forms, I don't know, costume design or other things that are not fine art, but are part of your creative expression. Bring it in, right? It makes you unique. It makes you who you are. Photograph it and bring it in. Are there rules about what doesn't go in there? I've read things like, no fan art. It says that you only copy, you're not unique. I don't know that I believe that. We've seen plenty of fan art, and some of it's been very good, and it shows again that you're passionate about other artists. I haven't seen that. Now, if that's all there was, that would be a problem. But including a few pieces of that, I think is indicative of our generation. I don't think that that's a problem. If you have other questions along the way, collage, even photographing collage, I think is terrific. So having said that, I'd like to get your thoughts. I made up something on the left. What would you think if somebody came in with those couple of works of art on the left as part of their portfolio? What would the pros and the cons be of those works of art on the left, that collection? We've got our theme. We've got something that we're interested in. I see lots of bubbles. This is bubble boy or girl, whoever this is, right? We've latched onto an area that we're really interested in, and we're exploring it in lots of different ways. So I give credit for that. But I'm not seeing enough kind of breaking out of the box, and I'm not seeing enough sort of interrelationality, right? I'm wondering, what's the meaning of this? And that kind of takes me to our next point. Well, actually, I shifted the order around, but those are questions that I would, sorry. Those are questions that I would ask in the explanation process. I would say, I'm seeing a lot of bubbles. Can you speak to me about the subject matter of bubbles, right? What does that mean to you, or where does that come from? You better be prepared to answer that question, okay? Especially if that's what your portfolio looks like. Now, do you have to have, now listen, this is the proverbial age-old debate. Does there have to be an answer to the question, or could it just be art for art's sake? It could be art for art's sake, and that's okay. But I would hope maybe that there was a meaning there, or that we were exploring something, if that was it, right? So again, pros and cons, right? Okay, so let's look at the contents a little bit more. We're going to be looking at artistic skills. We're going to be seeing, do they have observational skills? Are they really able to observe what they're seeing in the world around them? Another point around this is we can tell if drawings have been made from still life, or from, figure drawings, say, for example, et cetera. In other words, from three-dimensional objects, or if it's a painting that's been created from a printed picture. And it's important to be able to do both of those things, because the ability, that's a skill, that's an observational skill, to be able to translate the three-dimensional world into a two-dimensional plane. And if we don't see a lot of evidence of that in the portfolio, it could be a red flag. It doesn't mean that it wouldn't be reason to accept somebody, but it would be a red flag. So techniques, and the way in which they're using different materials. Next point. And then art making process. And we might ask them, what's your process like? You might also consider this, especially with technology, what it is. As you're working on a piece, stop and take pictures at different intervals. That's a really useful way. For example, when you're presenting a work of art that's important, show not only the work of art, but maybe 4 images of it in process. That could be a fantastic way to show your committee what your process is about in case they ask you a process question. Funny you should ask about process because look at what I have here, right? That could be terrific. Contents, but these are things that we would contemplate, like how well did they show their knowledge of line and shape and form and texture and composition and space and value, color, repetition, rhythm, balance, emphasis, movement, unity. How much do we see those things throughout the portfolio, right? So not every piece is going to have these things, and not every portfolio will have these things. But will there be a majority of them somewhere collectively? We would hope. And then finally, creativity. Is there innovation? Is there individual expression? Did they take risks? Was there experimentation? Even if it ended up with like weird perspective and the arm was a little weird in this one, but they took a risk, you know? I'm fine with it. It was cool. More practice, that'll work out, you know? Or I've never seen somebody use wax and oil. That's weird, but they're on, like, if we could work that out, that would be something. That's cool, you know? Or I've never seen somebody digitize the old master style before. Like, I love the blending of the old with the new. That's really cool. I like what they're doing with that, you know? That's what do you bring to the table? What's uniquely you? Right? Okay. And then the last piece was that explanation. So this is this piece that I said. And a lot of times I have to tell you, this is the challenging one for students, and I can understand why, because a lot of times people are so nervous, and it's unfortunate. And this is what I tried to tell you. Think of this as much as you interviewing the professors as they're, you know, getting to know you. And you want to see, like, do we fit together? Are you a match for me as much as am I a match for you, you know? But here's what you should be able to do. And it's not hard. Practice with your family, practice with friends. But you know, remember, nobody's a better expert at your art than you. You're the expert of your art. So you should be able to say, what was the media? What was it made out of, right? And what's the title, you know? Just the most simple things. Like, you would be surprised when people, oil, or is this tempera? And they're like, or, you know, acrylic or whatever. Dude, you made it. You don't know what it's made. Come on. What was being communicated here? Or like, or was this made for a class? I mean, like, you don't want to ask that. We're trying to step it up a little bit here. But so what was being communicated? What was its purpose? Or, you know, something like that. And then they say, it was for an AP class. Okay, I get it was from an AP class, but what was the purpose of the assignment? Or, you know, what was the objective, right? So try to take it to the next level there. Like, let's try to articulate what were we trying to achieve with the creation of this piece? What was it trying to communicate, right? Outside of the realm of, you know, checking a box for an assignment in school. how does it relate to your overall portfolio, or how does it break away from what we're seeing generally? So if Bubble Boy brought in a rabid shark, what, how, I think you should address that. This is different. What's going on here? Is it? I don't know. Well, like, you should know, right? um, or say, yeah, this was before I was really into bubbles. And it was after an incident where, that they were finding a lot of sharks on the beaches, and I was terrified to go in the water. But then after the spring came, the following year, and nobody was talking about finding sharks anymore, I was back into my peaceful land of bubbles, and I never worried about vicious sharks again. So that's how they relate or don't relate. That's a silly example, but you get my point. Be able to justify, why are you including it? But I wanted to include the shark because it does show that I'm not all bubbles, right? That I have a serious side, and I get scared sometimes, or that it shows my connection to my community, or it's dark. And these bubbles, you would never know I had this dark side unless you saw this, terrifying shark drawing, right? You get the idea. What did you learn from creating the piece? Any stories like that you have to tell, anything that really reveals some sort of internal process, because I think we have them, right? I'm an artist. I know that's one of the reasons why I love creating art, and why I was turned off by having to sell it, because I didn't want anything to tamper with that process, right? So I think pay attention to those stories, practice telling those stories, so that you're able to really convey them clearly. And then, like I said, avoid negative talk unless it's constructive. Like, I really don't like the way this turned out, but I learned that I would never mix the paint that way again. And the next time that I do that, I know it's going to be really killer. I can't wait to try this again, or something along those lines, right? So I'm just looking at time. I was going to show you a couple of resources or examples that I thought we could look at together, and then have some question and answer time. I do want to warn you, comparison is the thief of joy. Have you heard this? So I'm going to show you some resources, and we're going to look at some sample portfolios. But these are exceptional portfolios, and if your art is not at this level, I don't want you to feel disappointed in yourself, or that you'll never make an art student, because these are ridiculously terrific portfolios. And you should not compare your current work or your future work, I think, to these levels, okay? And you might go down a black spiral tunnel of depression and despair if you do too much of this kind of research online as to what a typical portfolio looks like. In fact, I think it's a disservice. So I'm hesitant to spend too much time kind of poking around and looking at things. But I do want to point you in the direction of resources, so that knowledge is power and information is useful. So I will do that. And then I do want to leave some time for question and answer. Okay. So if at any time you would like to look at different types of portfolios, you can go to YouTube. I think this is a great resource, and put in accepted portfolio. I heard SVA, RISD, Pratt's, Parsons, Otis, etc. People who get into those schools love to post their accepted portfolio 2020 or whatever the year may be, and you'll see elaborate videos of these mind-blowing portfolios. Again, do not compare your current work, future work, any work to these portfolios. They are, again, if they're being posted on YouTube, they are truly probably the exception than the norm. Uh, so that is a resource though, and I have shared it with you so that if you are curious, you could do that. Something I like a lot though is this. I've included a link to a blog where there's another resource called Ask the Art Professor, Ask the Art Prof. And they've culled a lot of the videos that are relevant just for producing art portfolios, and they've posted them there on this blog. And that's a terrific resource because Ask the Art Prof has lessons, it has all different kinds of things, and there's a lot of just the portfolio things get lost on the page. But this blog has pulled together just the portfolio relevant things. And sometimes they'll show, or they'll even have students who've been accepted recently, not necessarily even at just the big name schools, but smaller schools even, show their portfolios. And sometimes they'll even say lessons I learned in the process. There's a lot of really great videos there. And then there's another guide I like a lot, and this is what we're going to click on. I don't agree with every bit of advice because they speak to the big art schools as well as, liberal art schools with art programs. And again, I don't necessarily agree with everything that they've posted, but they have a lot of examples there. So we're just going to look at some of them, and I'm going to quiz you. And I have to just adjust my share. So just 1 second here. New share of my, okay. Can you see the how to student art guide website? So I'm just going to scroll down here so that you can see some of the visual examples. Okay, and I'd like to see, you all have a lot of information. I would like to just see what some of your thoughts are. What do you think? It says, these drawings are completed entirely in graphite pencil or charcoal and white paper and may be realistic or abstract. They're derived from the whole part of a bicycle or arranged alone. They're examples of an exciting level of skill and creativity, students applying to the to RISD, okay? A bunch of different types of bicycle drawings. So that might have been one of the prompts, was a bicycle drawing that they wanted to see in their application that year. Okay. So how did certain students make their bicycle drawing stand out? Well, this is a bit of a surreal bicycle. Can you see the screen, the student art guide? If I could just get an audio.
Yes, we can see it.
Okay, yes. Thank you. So somebody took a surreal approach to it by doing this odd sort of, like toy bicycle. Somebody made a bicycle out of rope on a string on the ground, right? That's clever. They didn't say it had to be a real bicycle, right? So a lot of people are playing with surrealism, shadows of bicycle or parts of bicycles. They're using sort of the cropping idea of photography to just show pieces of it, fragments of reality, right? You can see other people are using like bicycles as if they were goggles, or, or I'm going to show a bicycle. I'm going to do it realistic, but I'm going to do an old-fashioned bicycle. That's my bit of creativity, right? So, a professor who's evaluating this bicycle relationship to, say, this drawing of a bicycle, what do you think? There's not a lot of contrast of light and darkness here, where here we've got striking black and striking white, a lot of great blending of colors. Here there's just very fine lines and sort of a general sense of contour. We don't have depth recession in space. We don't have shadow. There's not a lot of emotion. I appreciated the thought of an antique bicycle, right? But there's not a lot more to kind of sink your teeth into, Where here, there's something really kind of interestingly suggestive to it. Or, where this one, look at, how about we compare this one to this one? They're both parts of a bike, right? But this one has all of those, elements that we talked about of shade, value, hue, right? In a much more satisfying kind of a way. So in this particular example, this is showing you, let's see, maybe 20 artists that have all, so at RISD, for example, they must have had one of the things that they required the students to submit was an image of a bicycle. Yeah, so 20 different students submitted an image of a bicycle, and it had to been done monochrome, so with black and white or pencil. And so this is kind of the professor's way of evaluating apples to apples as much as possible. But you can start to see, the differences in skills, right? And again, it's not that I don't appreciate somebody who does just a part of a wheel. This part of a wheel is superior to this part of a wheel for the reasons that I mentioned. So there again, I would see what they're asking for in their portfolio submission guidelines. So if they're saying 10 pieces only, then I think you want to pick your 10 strongest pieces. And then within that 10 strongest pieces, make sure that you're throw in a couple that are showing some diversity and whatever. And particularly with the schools that you're mentioning, you're going to want to make sure that you're showing cohesion and a development of a style that's very strong, et cetera. I would think in that case, going back to the past would be a detriment. They're saying 50 images. Well, then by all means, show the progression, tell the whole story, the whole thing. But if they want something that's very tightly focused, I would say it would be a detriment, because it would really be taking away from who he has developed into. Who is this candidate that they're accepting right now? Yeah, it's always a balance, like for us, I mean, we encourage 40, 50 pieces in a portfolio review. So here, now this is a portfolio for art school by Grace Camille Lee. These are all pieces by the same person. Okay, and there is a theme. Personal artwork, some are completed as part of a foundations course. She's an English student. There's a theme of inner workings, right? Making the interior landscape visible outside of the body, right? This introspection. We're seeing charcoal, we're seeing some sort of, I'm assuming, oil painting here and here. And there's a bit of a cohesion to it. It's hard to tell with these small JPEGs exactly what what the medium is here. These could even be photographs of sculptural pieces. This is clearly a sculpture. And then you see pieces of sketchbooks. But there is the cohesion, but there's enough diversity. See, this is a story that's all kind of coming together. This is a beautiful, and see, now this clearly probably spreads, I would say probably 2 years, I would guess. I mean, the work of this caliber takes a long time to create. So I'm going to guess that this probably spread a couple years of her career, and yet it's all being included. And rightfully so, because it's showing a nice progression. It's diverse, but it's aligned in a theme. Again, I remind you, this is like professional artist material. This is really incredibly advanced. So, let's manage our expectations. So this is a bit more conceptual here. You can kind of spend a lot of time going through all different kinds of examples. Here's somebody who's really into portraits, Kingston University application by William Gavoni. And you can see all different kinds of portraits here. And portraits of different kinds, pencil portraits, ink portrait, right? pen, I would say. Maybe this is even ballpoint pen. I don't know, which is also really cool. Sharpies, ballpoint pens. We're seeing a lot of less conventional kinds of materials. Yeah, observational skills and drawings, architecture down here at the bottom. See, now that's a really neat addition. So you can see that there's a lot of different kinds of things, even though it's not in line necessarily with portraits. It is showing diversity, and it is still in line with that appreciation of observation, of sort of accuracy with line and form. Yeah, well-rounded candidate with a wide skills base. So you get the idea there. I would just kind of wrap up the presentation then.
And thank you so much for helping us at the library with such an amazing program. I mean, this was amazing, and I've walked away with a bunch of tips for how to make awesome art portfolios. So thank you so much.
Great. My pleasure. Take good care, everyone.